Hi yogis, it's the Spiritual Enchantress here. Welcome back to my channel. And if you're new to my channel, welcome. This video is going to be based on it's going to be a beginner focused video. So if you have never done yoga before, or you're fairly new to yoga and you'd like me to take more time explaining the poses and giving you some different modifications, if you're not quite at that strength level to hold yourself in the full pose yet, then this is the perfect video for you. And I'd like to also add in that if you're a beginner yogi, that I really encourage you to go out and buy some yoga blocks, because they're gonna really help with the alignment. I even use them for my own practice all the time, because even if you're flexible enough to get into a certain position, sometimes depending on how long your arms to your leg ratio is, or your spine to arm ratio, can really affect the positioning of the pose and how you can find length in the spine, and having these blocks really helps with that. In addition, having a mat with these markers on it can be helpful as well for placement of your feet if you're just kind of learning the ropes of yoga. So what I'd like you to do is we're going to start in child's pose. Just get some length in the spine, find a nice stretch in the hips to start with. So we're going to take our knees out and kiss the edge of our mat and walk our chest down to the mat with our fingers spread nice and wide, taking our forehead down to the mat. If this is too sensational in the hips, you can place blocks underneath your chest to help elevate up, or even take your feet or your knees closer together so that you're not forced so close down to the mat. And this works as well. Part of the reason I'd like us to start in child pose is because if at any time during the practice you're feeling that it's too hard to carry on, you need to catch your breath, child's pose is always acceptable to take until you can catch your breath back up again and find equanimity. Breathing in and out of the nose here, finding nice stretch in the back of the spine, the shoulders and the side body. Now slowly creeping the hands back in until they come under the chest and pressing our chest up. We're going to come onto all fours, bringing our hands directly underneath our shoulders, aligning our knees underneath the hips, pressing into the hands, finding a nice straight back, and we're going to take cat and cow. So we're going to arch the back up as you breathe out, and round the back down, pressing our hips up and our chest forward, breathing in. And breathe out, round the back, tuck the hips forward, press into the hands, and breathe out as you press the hip bones backwards and open up the chest. 2 more. Beautiful. Tucking the toes under, coming up onto our knees, taking a nice standing position. we're going to find a nice rooted posture in our feet, and we're going to lengthen all the way up the legs, through the spine, tucking the hips forward, really pulling the belly in and up, lengthening through the spine, drawing the arms up near our ears and extending our fingertips nice and wide, bringing our shoulders back, hips forward, and looking up between our fingertips. Really getting some nice length in the body here to start off with. Now I'd like you to take your hands together and get a nice little bend, arch in the back, breathing in and extend out. Exhale as you fold over at the hips and hang the body down. Now we can bring some nice bends in the knees, and if extending your legs fully straight is too much for you, you can always keep a nice bend as you allow the top body to fold over here. It's not about how straight you can get your legs, it's just about getting your legs to the point where you can feel a nice, comfortable stretch, pushing yourself to the edge, but not pushing yourself too far. Breathing in, lifting all the way back up, gazing between the hands at the ceiling, and breathing out as we bring our hands to prayer position at the chest. We're gonna start with tree pose. So we're going to take our left foot, plant it firmly down, bringing our hips and tucking them in forward. We're gonna take our right foot and place it anywhere along the inside of our leg, as long as it's not on the inside of the knee. We wanna protect our knees here. So if you can place it up into your upper thigh and still get your hips forward, perfect. And if you have to have it on your inner ankle for flexibility and balance purposes, that's perfect too. Honor where you are. Now, once you have your position, bring your hands at prayer position to the chest. Bring your shoulders back like you're squeezing a pencil, pressing firmly into the hands and pressing firmly into the leg, making sure our hips are tucked in forward, creating nice length in the spine here. And if you fall out, just come right back into it. We all fall every once in a while. It's just part of the practice. It's part of the learning process. Breathing in and out of the nose, keeping that length in the spine. If you can raise your arms all the way up overhead. Extend those fingertips nice and wide, bringing those shoulders backwards. Shoulder blades coming together, lengthening the spine here, and looking and gazing up. And releasing all the way down. Gonna shake out the legs a little bit. We're gonna take the other side. So we're gonna firmly plant our right foot down, taking the left foot onto the inside of the right leg. It may be a little higher or lower than the other side. Sometimes one side is a little more flexible than the other. Remembering to keep our hips forward, our spine elongated, and our shoulders back. Nice firm pressure between the foot and the leg, and that's gonna help lock us in and balance us here. Nice pressure between the two hands, keeping those shoulders back. Finding a spot on the wall if you're struggling here to gaze at. This is called your drishti, your focus point, and it really helps when we're trying to balance. If you can and you would like to, I invite you to bring your hands up. Extend your fingertips nice and wide and bring the shoulders back. Find a length in your tree pose here. not, just keep your hands at prayer position at the chest. That is perfectly fine. And releasing here. And shake it out. We're gonna come to the top of our mat now, finding our nice positioning with the feet, firmly planting them in, reaching our hands all the way up as we breathe in, and leaning over, bending at the hips as we breathe out. We're gonna bring our hands onto our shins and bring our back up until it is up. You find a parallel 90-degree angle here. This is called finding lift, creating space. And we can always use our blocks here as well to help find that length and posture that we need. Planting our hands down on the ground, and we're either going to step back into plank, or if you have the abdominal strength, this is certainly not required, jumping back into plank. All right, I'm gonna warm up the shoulders and the abdominals here by shifting into downward facing dog. In down dog, our hands should still be shoulder width distance apart, and our feet hip width distance apart, making sure our ankle or our heels aren't toward each other or too far out. They should be a nice straight line. If you have to have your heels higher up, that's fine, and then eventually over time you'll get that nice flexibility in the back of the knees and be able to release your heels a little bit further down. Another really important thing to consider in this position is the strength in your shoulders. We don't want to be hunched over like this. We want to push into the hands, really have them nice and wide and create a nice suction cup in the palm of the hand here. Pressing into our mat and creating a nice straight line from our hands to our shoulders. If that means you have to have your knees bent like this, that is perfectly fine. Really getting that length in the shoulders here. And we're going to sway forward back into plank, and then hold for 5 breaths, and then sway back into downward dog 5 times. Okay, pressing backwards into down dog. Swaying forward into plank. If plank's too much, you can modify by having your knees down. Really working on still pressing our shoulders up off the floor, and then pressing into your feet and extending back into down dog when it comes to time for that. Again, we can have our knees bent here in down dog. We're really trying to strengthen our shoulders here. And shifting back into plank. Remember, we can always modify. There's no problem with modifying to suit where we are at this moment. Pressing back to down dog. Shifting back to plank. And we're going to lower all the way down to our mats here. Untuck the toes. And with the hands just on the outside of our shoulder blades, we are going to press up into a baby cobra here. Finding a nice little stretch in the back body here. Keeping our elbows tucked in, facing backwards. We don't want our elbows out to the side, really tucking them in close to the body. And if you'd like to take this a little bit further, tucking these toes under and pressing all the way up. Really finding length in the spine and lifting it to down dog. Now I'm going to show you that transition one more time. We're going to press into plank. We're going to lower down to chaturanga. You keep your elbows tucked in next to your body. Lower down, nice and slow. A full chaturanga would be like this, hovering off the mat. But if this is too much at this time, you can take your knees down or come all the way down onto the stomach. Pressing into a cobra if this is where you're at. Or if you have the strength, you can come down into a chaturanga and press forward into an up dog. As you can see, the knees and thighs are hovering up off the ground, really pressing into the hands, pulling the shoulder blades back, and using an extension in the legs to keep them hovering off the floor. Tucking the toes under and pressing up into down dog. Really making sure there's that length in the spine, a nice straight line from the hands to the shoulders here. Breathing in and out of the nose. We're going to look to the top of the mat and step or lightly jump our feet to our hands. Breathe in as we extend all the way up. Looking between our hands at the ceiling, creating length, tucking the hips forward, and breathe out as we lower all the way down, folding over at the hips here. We're going to breathe in as we find length in the spine, come to a flat back, placing our hands down on the ground, a shoulder width distance apart. We're going to step or lightly jump into plank. We're going to lower down into chaturanga or all the way down to the mat. Remember to modify for your body and where you're at right now. Breathe in as we shift into down dog, or up dog, I'm sorry, or cobra, and breathe out as we shift into down dog. We're gonna take our right leg and we're gonna lift it up off the mat, keeping the alignment in the shoulders here. We can open up the hip for a nice stretch. Remembering to keep the alignment in the shoulders, really press into the hands. And then square out the hip, bringing the knee and the toes facing the mat. And shift it all the way forward, bringing that foot between the hands. Coming all the way up, keeping the left foot facing forward, hips squared off and the knee facing the mat. Lifting the top body up, bringing the shoulders back, creating a length in the spine, and pressing into the feet, creating a scissoring effect in the legs so you're not just sagging down, lifting up, lifting the arms up. This back knee can be bent for flexibility purposes. And make sure that there is a 90-degree angle in the front leg, or if you cannot get that 90-degree angle, it is fine to have it at an angle like this, just not so far forward that your knee is coming past your toes. If that means moving your foot over to the side more, or moving it backwards or forward, that is all part of finding what works for you and your body to get the balance you need here. This is called crescent lunge. Now place your back knee down, untuck the toes, get a nice stretch here in the left hip. Keeping the hips squared off, pressing into that front foot, keeping the shoulders nice and far back and the arms nice and lengthened. Breathing in and out of the nose and focusing on your drishti to balance you here. If it's too much to have your arms up and you find you're falling over a lot, there's no shame in taking your blocks and using them to help you here, help support you. There's different settings on the blocks, so you can have them like this. So you can find length in the spine, you can tuck them in closer to your body if you need. Maybe have them on the second level here, coming into the stretch a little deeper, or having them down like this, creating length in the spine. It's really up to you. I really want you to feel this with your body. As long as you're getting that length and you're not creating too much pressure on the left hip, then you are going to get something out of this pose. Dropping the blocks, tucking that toe under and pushing back into a downward facing dog. Looking to the top of our mat, stepping or lightly jumping our feet to our hands. Inhaling all the way up. Exhaling all the way down. Inhale, create length. Place your hands down and step or lightly jump back into a plank position. Lower down to chaturanga. Inhale, upward dog. And exhale, downward dog. Taking the left leg, lifting it up off the mat, opening up that hip, checking the pressure in your hands, really pressing into them so you can align the shoulders here. Now square off the hips so your knee and your toes are facing the mat. And swing the left leg forward and bring it between the hands at the top of the mat here. Getting the positioning ready so that you can bring yourself up into a crescent lunge. Find length in the spine. This back knee can be bent. This front leg can be up a little bit straighter. Really adjust the position for your body and where you're at right now. Focus on your drishti. The weight should be in the heel and ball of the foot equally and not clinging to dear life with your toes like this. I find it helpful to lift my toes up a little bit, and then I can really feel my foot pressing in around on the mat. Now bringing your hands down and bringing that back knee down, untucking the toes here. Coming up into a nice stretch, lengthening the spine. Again, if this is too much pressure on the front hip because you do not have the support of your upper body, press into this front leg to bring yourself up a little bit higher, and or use your blocks to assist you in lengthening the spine here, taking a little bit of pressure off of that hip. And you can even play around with this. You can even pause the video and see what works for you. Do a couple different variations and see what feels best for your body here. Remembering not to try and push yourself so far that you're feeling sharp pains that are going to cause injury. Placing your hands on either side of the foot, pressing into the hands, straightening out that back leg and bringing your left foot back into plank, shifting into downward facing dog. A few breaths here. Look between your hands, step or lightly jump to the top of your mat. grab onto your toes with the peace fingers, and you can have the knees bent, modifying for where your flexibility is here. And if you can't reach even with bending your knees, then simply just take the forward fold and use your blocks, modifying for yourself. If you can hold on to your toes, you can bend the knees and really pull inwards here, or bring the knees straight, really pulling in to get an extended stretch. Breathing in and out of the nose. And releasing. Breathe in, come all the way up, lengthen the spine, the body, tuck those hips forward, bring the shoulders back, and release as you breathe all the way out. Breathe in, find length in the spine. Bring the hands down, step or lightly jump back into plank position. Lower down, chaturanga, or all the way to the mat. Breathe in, come into cobra or upward facing dog. Tuck the toes under. Breathe out as you come into downward facing dog. Now we're gonna bring our right foot forward between the hands again, except for we're gonna straighten the front leg this time. This is pyramid pose. Even if you can, so you obviously don't have to straighten that front leg all the way if you don't have the flexibility to do so. You can have a micro bend in the knees. And if you find that you're just hanging out over here, or you can't come all the way down, those blocks would really come in handy to either hold yourself up. The back leg and the front leg should both be facing the front of the mat. The knees facing forward. They should not be turned either way, just forward. Hips squared off. Pulling up and lengthening the spine here. If that means you have to come up onto the balls of the feet to shift your body forwards enough to get that length in the spine, that might be helpful as well. And again, like I said before, we can play around with the heights of our blocks here to figure out where our edge is, and then where we can go down but still having that length in the spine, so you're not hunched over like you want length. Nice and long lines from our tailbone all the way to our shoulders, bringing our shoulders back, getting a nice stretch in the back of the leg here. If you would like, we can either stay here, using different levels of the blocks, or maybe trying to come down onto our hands, or we can plant our left hand down, either on a block or the mat, on the the inside of the right foot, and lift our right arm up towards the ceiling, creating a nice twist here. And again, finding that alignment, a nice straight line, coming through the chest, bringing the shoulders back, and lengthening the arm here. And releasing, bringing our hands to either side of the foot, bending that front knee, and stepping that foot back into downward facing dog. Taking a few breaths here, in and out of the nose. Remembering not to sag in the shoulders and bring a hunch in the back, nice long lines here. And always remembering you can take child's pose if you are struggling and need a little breather. Now we're going to take our left leg and bring it between the hands. Straighten that front leg and use your blocks or don't. That is up to you, as long as you can find length in the spine here. You can come up high onto the toes or come down further on that back foot with your heel coming towards the mat. Making sure that your hips are not open to the side, that we are squaring off the hips like a nice pair of scissors between, it's like our legs are forming a pair of scissors. They should be directly facing straight, hips all the way down to the toes. Nice length in the spine here. You can have a micro bend in the front or back knee depending on your flexibility. Maybe if you feel that your the back of your knee has opened up a bit, try moving down a level on the block. Play around with it a little bit, the more comfortable you get with the position. And either staying here or planting the right hand, down on the inside of the left foot or onto a block on the inside of the left foot, extending the right arm all the way up towards the ceiling and creating a nice long straight line between both hands, the floor and the ceiling. Obviously, if you cannot get all the way up for flexibility purposes, then just do what you can, but still pressing into that hand that is supporting you and creating length as much as you can, not just hunching over like this. If this is what you're doing, then you should maybe just stay here, really lengthening all the way up, using those abdominal core strength, the strength of your shoulder muscles to really help stretch everything out. And release, bringing our hands back on either side of the foot. Bring that foot back, pressing into downward facing dog. Walking our hands slowly backwards into a standing position. And sway a little bit here. Take on or grab onto the backs of the elbows and really just hang down. You can bend in the knees. Breathing in and out of the nose. And breathing in as we extend all the way up. And breathe out as we bring our hands to prayer position at the chest. Now we're going to step our feet nice and wide, sideways on our mat here. So they should be slightly further than our hips. Hip width distance, about a foot further out from hip width on either side. Now we're gonna take a bend right at the hips and slowly lower, keeping the spine nice and long and that stomach tucked in. Lower, lower, lower. If you can place your hands down on the mat, wonderful. If not, take your great blocks that are very helpful and use them to support you and create that length that we're looking for here. Again, we can play around with the levels of the blocks and slowly work our way down, and don't expect this to happen overnight. It could take months, if not years, to get down to the floor, depending on where you're at now. That big deal. If you would like to take it to the next level, either stay where you are and just feel that stretch in the backs of the legs. You can have a micro bend in the knees as well, as long as you're creating that length in the spine. And if you'd like to take it to the next level, you can slowly walk our hands backwards between the legs and get an additional stretch here. Walking our feet forward, coming back to a straight spine, and bringing a bend in the knees. Moving our feet out on a slight angle here, so they're not fully facing the side of the mat, not fully facing forward, on a nice angle in between. And bring a bend in the knees. We're going to straighten up and bend, straighten and bend, straighten, keeping the pelvis tucked forward, and bend, straighten and bend, and straighten. Heel toe the feet into standing. We're gonna come down and lie on our backs on our mat. We're going to take bridge pose. So maybe having a block nearby, see where you're at. You can either press your feet into the mat, hip width distance apart beneath your tailbone, having your shoulders down on the mat, and press the hips up, really pressing into the feet, pressing the hips up. If this is too much for you, you can take a supported bridge and actually place a block beneath and just kind of have it to assist you holding up without straining. And if this is good and you have a little bit more room, we can walk our shoulders underneath our bodies and give us a little bit more room for an additional lift in the pelvis here. Really keeping the feet squared off and the hips squared off, not bending the neck side to side, and releasing down. We're gonna take happy baby pose. So we're gonna either take our feet together and hold the insides of our ankles. If this is too much, we can either prop our back up with a pillow or take a strap. A scarf is a good substitute. Wrap it around the feet and then use the scarf to get that leverage we need to hold our feet up here. Otherwise, we're going to take the outsides of our feet with our hands, keeping the tailbone down on the mat, not bringing it up like this, keeping it firmly planted on the mat, and creating a little bit of pressure in the bottom of the feet to bring our knees towards the mat here. Really keeping length and straightness in the spine, bringing our shoulders together. Breathing in and out of the nose. And releasing the feet, allowing the feet to drop down to the mat. Letting the knees fall side to side. Take some windshield wipers here. You're going to do either a supported shoulder stand or a full shoulder stand. So you can either take a block and place it underneath your hip bones and bring your feet up like so if you don't have a block, but you don't want to go into the full shoulder stand. Just bringing your feet up towards the ceiling and lying there with your back pressed firmly into the ground using your hands beside you. Otherwise, we can push up onto the shoulders here, create length, bringing our toes towards the ceiling, straightening the legs, tucking our hips forward, and using our hands to help support our back here. No moving the neck side to side, just looking at our toes or at our belly. And releasing one vertebrae at a time, all the way down to the mat. Hugging the knees into the chest. Scooching our hips slightly over to the the right side of the mat, and dropping our knees over to the left. Bringing our arms out into a T and looking over to the right. If you'd like to increase the stretch, you can cross the knees here. If your shoulder is lifting up off the floor, you are too deep into the twist, and you can simply ease out of it. You can even use a block and place it underneath your knees to help support them so it's not pulling you too far into the twist here, and that's perfectly fine. Listening to our bodies here. Bringing our knees back to center, scooching our hips slightly over to the left this time, allowing our knees to drop over to the right side and gazing over to the left side. Again, either modifying by placing a block under the knees so that your shoulder's not lifting off the ground, or in the opposite direction, crossing the knees so that you can go further into the twist. Releasing here and rolling back to center. Taking the legs out nice and wide on either side of the mat. Letting the legs drop open. Arms nice and wide on either side of the mat, allowing the hands to drop open. Releasing all the muscles in your body, really coming into full relaxation here in Shavasana, final rest pose. Breathing in and out of the nose. Rolling over onto our right side, slowly pressing ourselves up to seated. Coming to sit in a cross-legged position. I want to thank you for joining me on my mat today, yogis. Please comment below if you have any questions regarding the modifications or any of the poses. I would love to answer them for you, and I really honor you for coming to this practice and making it to the end. Thank you so much. If you like the video, please like it. Comment if you haven't already, and subscribe if you would like to be updated with new content. Thanks so much. The light in me honors the light in you. Namaste. Bye.